I was never prepared to be a father. I had no idea how hard it would be, or how heavy the responsibility would feel. You know, it doesn't seem right to have that much influence over one small life. The way they look up to you, and how easy it is to let them down. Maybe if my dad had been there, it would have been easier. But he wasn't. I grew up most of my life without a father. I can remember his face, but I can't remember a life with him. The last time I saw him, it was on a school day. He was always gone in the mornings, but for some reason he was able to drop me off that day. He even gave me a kiss. I will never forget that day.
And that little boy, John Finch, 11 years old at the time, is my guest today. John, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
I mean, you've watched this many times, and I mean, it still must touch you, and you go, wow, that really was my life.
It does. You know, I've watched it so many times that now it doesn't bother me quite as much, but there's, depending on the day, there's times that it does still kind of get me, just the travesty of it all, you know.
Well, I know, and because it was such a big impact in your life, and we're going to talk a little bit about your story, but I want to just mention just a few statistics here. And I mean, and not just for the sake of, you know, just throwing some numbers at you, but the statistics are really quite overwhelming. You know, fathers that are not physically or even emotionally, you know, part of the home. I mean, it's really profound. You know, fathers whose children whose fathers are absent, 5 times more likely to commit suicide, 7 times more likely to drop out of school, 15 times more likely to commit rape, 7 times more likely to be a teen mom, 24 times more likely to run away, and 15 times more likely to be in prison while still a teen. Fathers are so important to be in the home. So John, your story though is your father commits suicide at 11. Obviously you were impacted by that, but it would be years later when you had 3 daughters, you would see some of the challenges you were facing as a dad.
I did. You know, for 30 years, I just kind of walked lost, not knowing what it meant to be a real man, not understanding what that looked like. And so I took, you know, bits and pieces from friends of mine's dad. They weren't necessarily always the best examples, but I took bits and pieces and really bought into everything that the world says you need to be as a man, as a father. It's all about money and power and success and all of those things. So, you know, it was about 8 years ago that God really just took me to a place of brokenness and really made me understand that I needed to look into this father wound thing and the abandonment issues that I had had for 30 years, because it was what was really destroying my life as a man, husband, and father.
Okay, the word in the phrase that you're talking about, the father wound. Some are saying, well, what are you talking about? Because that, I mean, I know it affects a lot of people, but when you say father wound, what do you mean by that?
So it's some way that a dad has wounded a child. Maybe it's physically, they've been physically or verbally abusive. Maybe it's a son that never heard the words, I love you, I'm proud of you, I believe in you. Maybe it's a dad who's abandoned the kids, to never talk, to never reach out to them again. Maybe it's a son that struggles with alcohol because he heard the words, you will never amount to anything. Maybe it's a girl who didn't get that fatherly love and affection that she needed from her father. So she's become promiscuous because she's going to look for love somewhere. She's going to look for that fatherly love somewhere. If she doesn't get it from her dad, she's going to find it somewhere.
So what kind of dad were you when you came across this realization that you had this father wound and that maybe you weren't the dad that you should be?
You know, I was the good dad. I always believed I was a pretty good dad. I always thought I could be a lot better husband. I had a lot of work to do in the husband area. I was engaged, but to the extent that I just had to be. You know, when I was home, I was engaged as much as I knew about I needed to be engaged. So I was the guy that thought he was doing a pretty good job because I was measuring myself against Bob, the next door neighbor. Well, Bob wasn't setting the bar very high. So, you know, I was doing really just the minimum amount that I needed to believe that I was a good dad.
Now, you wrote the book Father Effect. That comes out of the film that you also did. We saw a portion of that. There's a shorter version, about 15 minutes. You can see it on YouTube, Facebook, anywhere else. To see the full length, which is about an hour with some extra interviews, go to your website and we'll get the information up there. Why, though, John, did you feel it was so important to get this book out there?
Well, first of all, I think there's people that will watch movies and there's people that'll read a book. And they're kind of two different people, if you will. Some will do both, but usually they prefer one or the other. The book really gets into a lot more details as far as some of the things that we couldn't put in the film. When I talk about the practical advice on what men can do to become that dad, the husband, and the man that God created him to be.
And you interviewed a lot of different people from all cross sections, young fellows that were in prison because they were abandoned by their father.
We did. You know, there's some amazing stories of of redemption and how God has used forgiveness, just like in my life, that radically changed my life in every way when I came to forgive my father. There are stories in the book and in the movie that we share that are very similar stories of men and women both that have come to understand forgiveness for their dad and how it's changed their life.
Okay, John, we're going to take a break. We're going to continue on talking about the father effect. And I know there's some guys out there, you're feeling a little bit guilty. You know what? There's hope. We're going to give you that hope when we come back right after this.